Hi, everyone. Welcome in. Feel free to drop a quick hello in the chat. We always like to hear where everyone's calling in from. Maria and I are both actually calling in from San Francisco. Fun fact, that's where our office is based. Just a quick kickoff introductions. My name's Allison. I'm with the customer success team here at Scribe, and I'll pass it over to Maria.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria. I'm also working with a customer success team here at Scribe. And as Allison mentioned, we're based in San Francisco.
Awesome. And then we also have Meg on the chat here today. She's also a part of the customer success team here as well. She'll be helping facilitate the chat throughout the call. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop a quick couple of polls. This helps us kind of um, gauge your guys's experience level. So I'll start with that. Maybe we have some newer folks here at Scribe. I know the primary use case today is going to be L&D, so not going to launch that one that we normally typically do, but feel free to fill this out. This helps us kind of tailor the call in terms of pacing as well as overall just how to show functionality. Awesome. Looks like we have a little bit of a mix. Looks like most of us have had some sort of experience with Scribe, so that's good for us to know. I'll go ahead and end that. And then the last one I'm going to do is webinar speed preference. So this helps us, again, if maybe you have a meeting right after this, maybe you want a nice and slow session, feel free to fill that out as well. Awesome. Looks like pretty much everyone wants a nice steady walk or a nice stroll. So super helpful. We'll try to keep that in mind throughout the call today. I'll start off by sharing my screen. And before we get started, I just want to note, again, if you do have any questions, please do not hesitate to drop them in the chat, or also we have that nice Q&A box handy throughout the call. So do not hesitate to ask anything. We have plenty of hands on deck, but just to do a quick agenda here, we'll have a quick intro slides, and then we'll kind of go over how to scale training with Scribe, highlight a lot of our most relevant functionality in terms of L&D use cases, and then we'll also highlight some best practices and then leave some time specifically for questions at the end. For folks who are newer, I know there's a couple of them on here. We always like to highlight kind of what our main goal here is at Scribe, and that's to help automatically document and scale how your team's work gets done. I think a lot of folks, especially in L&D, their thing that may be top of mind is helping teams kind of document faster, but also just as important is to help those individuals actually, in terms of an end user, source that document on their own at their fingertips instantly. Another thing with that, right, is making sure everything's up to date, easy to maintain, and overall keeping it consistent. So that's something Scribe is definitely here to help with, and I would assume that's good for your guys' use case as well. All right. Let me go ahead and exit. So the first thing I really want to highlight, right, is I think once folks start to build up all this documentation, and I would assume most of you are doing that, a top of mind question we often get is, hey, how do I keep this maintained? How do I keep this dynamic and up to date? The nice thing with Scribe is, let's say maybe your process changed. You initially recorded this 6 months ago. Maybe something's kind of evolved since then. A nice thing to note is each time you make a change in the back end, if you share it with one of our ways to dynamically share, all those changes in the back end are going to automatically roll out to your end users. So for example, just to do a quick overview, maybe something changed on your end. Let's say I want to delete these 2 steps. Maybe they're no longer relevant, they're out of date. All I would do is I would just delete with this trash can icon on the right-hand side if I hover over it. I'll just delete these 2. Now let's say I want to add in something. Again, maybe you want to add in more context for your end users. Maybe you're finding once you've been testing a few things are starting to maybe be a little unclear at certain points. You can always recapture. So you would click this capture button when you go into this little plus sign. I want to note that this is nestled in between each step. So you can add this in anywhere throughout the Scribe. I'd click into that, and then you'll see I have this capture button. If I click into that, that's going to allow me to update my process either through the browser or the desktop. I'll also pause here and note that this is a way to also kind of use both the browser extension as well as the desktop way to capture. So maybe you have a process that lays within the web, and then maybe you also want to show it to your end users on what that looks like on an actual application. So this is a good way to kind of split it for folks. All right, so to my point, if you want to keep this updated, I want to note you want to click this publish button. This is going to roll out all of those changes. If you don't click publish and you just simply click done, think of this as your back end way to kind of draft before rolling it out to everyone. So if you want those changes that you just did to reflect for everyone, you're going to want to click publish. I know I often get that question, I made a change and now I have this yellow banner at the top. What does that mean? If you're getting that, that simply means that those changes haven't been rolled out and you're going to want to click that publish button. Awesome. I'll pause here to see if there's any initial questions. But yeah, that's the really nice thing about Scribe is you're kind of able to continuously work on these documents without having to change the URLs or start from scratch each time, which obviously in L&D, things are constantly evolving. All right. So as for what we typically recommend in terms of sharing, we have 3 different ways you can share, but I'm specifically going to highlight these first 2 today. You can export your documents to PDF, and I know sometimes that can be helpful for folks who maybe want a printout, but we typically like to recommend our link sharing as well as our embed. And the reason why is because this keeps it a dynamic way to share, again, kind of on the idea that you can keep those documents up to date with that dynamic sharing option. So if you wanted to share as a link, right, you can copy this link. Again, if you click this drop down, you can kind of tailor to who you want to share with. If you have folks who do not have a Scribe license or a Scribe viewer license, but you want to share with them, you're going to want to make sure you have this with anyone with the link can view. But if you do have authenticated viewer licenses, through Scribe for those end users, then you can get specific to either your organization-wide settings or even your team-by-team case basis. So if you are interested in locking down your content internally with authenticated viewers, and that's not something you currently have on, let's say, a base enterprise plan or a legacy enterprise plan, feel free to drop that interest in the chat, and we're happy to get in touch with you after the call. The nice thing I do feel like a lot of folks maybe overlook sometimes with this link sharing is we have this little drop down here. So before you copy the link, if you click into that, you'll see there's different viewing modes. And I think this is really nice to kind of cater your content to different learning preferences and different, training styles. So we have the scroll, which is our default, which is just easy to access, but maybe you want something like a video format. We do have our movie mode, which I know a lot of folks kind of are curious about. Describe has some way I can share this visually in some sort of video format. That would be the way to do it. And I'll show what these look like in just a second. But you also have the slides option, which is just kind of a slide, right? If you are curious on what this is going to look like before clicking into sharing that link to share with your end users, you can always click which one you prefer. And then you'll see there's this nice view preview button. So if I click into that, this is a way to kind of see what it's going to look like for those users. And then maybe I can change depending on what I want. If you're wondering what this looks like embedded, because you can also embed your content, let's say in your LMS, maybe a SharePoint, which is really popular with our Scribe users, your intranet, this is the way to do so. We're huge Notion users at Scribe. So this is what those viewing modes actually look like. For an embed, if you're kind of wondering what that is, it's going to be forward facing like you see here. So you'll see this is that scroll. We also have that slideshow, as I mentioned, that you can kind of easily click through. And then we also have that movie mode. I'll quickly show you what this looks like, just so you can see what that video looks like. So I won't play the whole thing for you, but I will note that users can go in and change that playback speed, the audio. So if you are wondering, oh, maybe if people want to speed it up a little bit, slow it down, they can kind of change that depending on their preference. If you're wondering how you can actually embed within maybe your LMS or your system, like I mentioned, as long as you have iframe capabilities in that system, you'll be able to embed. And so what you would do is you would just simply go to this embed section, click into what viewing mode you want, and then you're going to copy that embed code within your system. We do have quite a bit of documentation in our help center. I'm not sure if our team maybe wants to drop in the chat some examples of how to embed in like a SharePoint, etc. So resources there will be dropping sometime soon. But we have a few different resources built up depending on what you're trying to embed in. If you do run into any issues, don't hesitate to reach out to support or our success team. Happy to help. So now that we've kind of overviewed sharing and what that looks like in terms of like keeping things up to date, I do want to note that we also have another way to do this. I would imagine for your guys' use case, you have quite a bit of documentation built up and you kind of want this to lie in an easy, accessible way for your end users. I think that's a common issue, right, with L&D is that folks may be accessing content in different areas. Maybe things aren't all consolidated in one place and you're wondering, are users really resonating with what I'm doing? I would say a page is a good way to go about this. So we like to compare a scribe, which is what we kind of just went over, to a recipe. It's a step-by-step process telling you what to do with a little image versus a page is what we're seeing now. I like to compare this to a cookbook. So think of this as a one-stop shop for a lengthier process that you can add a little bit more context to it. This is an example of a new hire onboarding guide, but I want to note that we've had a lot of teams do one specific to Workday, new tool rollouts, implementations, or just specific lengthier processes that you want to break up into bite-sized pieces. So I'll quickly scroll through on what a page looks like, but you'll see this is an opportunity to just add a bit more context next to your already built up documentation with Scribe. You can also add in visual elements such as a Miro chart. So maybe you want some sort of visual or some sort of way to describe that process. This is a way to go about that. You can also hyperlink some built up resources. So maybe you have some relevant things that would be nice to lay side by side by a scribe. You can hyperlink that here. And then you can also embed a movie. So let's say, you have a video of yourself talking, or you even have a YouTube built up about the process. This is a good way to kind of go about that. Again, having it accessible next to your content. So like I mentioned, I would say the biggest use case here, right, is all of the documentation that you've built up can kind of be in that one spot. So for example, these are some things on Slack, Gmail, etc., are different tools. But the nice thing is you can kind of have them all in that one spot, and end users can just easily click into this at their fingertips. So you can put these guides together and have it in one spot, and they know where exactly to go. The nice thing with a page is it's similar to that dynamic sharing links that I just talked about in the way that all of these scribes and the changes that you do in the back end are going to automatically roll out to this page. So you kind of get peace of mind knowing if I'm sharing this page as a whole and an end user clicks into this, all of those back-end changes that I've made are going to automatically reflect in this guide. You can't share this as a PDF. You can only share it as a link or embed it into a system like I mentioned with a scribe, because pages are meant to be dynamic, like I've mentioned. So if you're to do an export, then unfortunately it would be static. So again, this is a good way to kind of keep things ever changing with your content. All right. If you're wondering how can I kind of get started with Scribe pages and just kind of reference some use cases that are relevant to myself, we'll drop this in the chat. We do have a built-up repository for all of our Scribe examples and page template examples called the gallery. So this is a good way to kind of reference maybe some examples of some tools you're dealing with and you're trying to train folks on, or maybe you want to kind of look into creating a template specifically for your use case. We have these little pages that you can click into and utilize and copy and paste this template within your dashboard. So you'll see here's a nice little template, and I can just click use this template and it's going to copy and paste within my dashboard. I'll pause here to see if there's any questions. Good question. In terms of how to actually start with a page, all you would do is just navigate to your Scribe dashboard. And you'll see in this upper right-hand corner with the new and the plus sign, I'll click into that and you'll see I have the option to create a page. So I can simply go into that and that's a nice blank slate for me to get started. We do actually have a pages specific spotlight session coming up next month that we're going to highlight how to create one and how to really edit it and share it. So if you're looking to get a little bit more specific into it, feel free to join that session. All right. The last thing I'm going to go over before handing it off to Maria here is that I think a lot of the times when we build up all this documentation, a huge concern is how is this sticking with my end users? Are they engaging with it? What does the engagement rates look like? So we have two different ways you can go about this. The first way is the insights on a document level. So for example, I can click into my Scribe and you'll see this nice little chart here. If I click into it, it's going to have the total amount of views, completions, and then the completion rate. The completion rate is going to be just how long folks have actually scrolled through the document. So if they went from start to end perfectly, that's going to be 100%. Again, this is a good way to kind of tailor the way you're going to edit because maybe it's 50%, maybe it's 60%. Maybe you need to add in a little bit more pop outs towards the end of the Scribe to kind of keep users engaged. I will note if you are on our base enterprise plan or you're on a plan that doesn't have authenticated viewer licenses, you'll only be able to see granular insights into your existing creators. So if you have folks who don't have a Scribe license and you're looking to kind of make sure your viewers are actually engaging, then this would be a really good use case for our authenticated viewer licenses because you'll be able to see their completion rates as well as the creator license completion rates. Right now, if you were going to kind of just want to engage a general interest and you're on that base plan or a non-viewer license plan, you could still get an idea in the guest section. It's just going to be something like Anonymous Acorn versus Maria Montevet. So that's a good way to kind of think of it. Outside of the document level, we also have it in the Scribe dashboard. So on the left-hand side, if you click into Insights, you'll see there's a nice visual where I can go in and look at this a little bit further. So I encourage you guys to kind of play around with this. Again, this is accessible through this Insights tab. So I'm going to pass it off to Maria to share a little bit more.
So perfect. Thank you guys so much for kind of, helping us or for tuning into that half of the presentation. Allison did a really great job of just priming the scene of what it looks like on behalf of, L&D teams, starting to use Scribe. So now I'm going to frame this in terms of a learner. Say you created this entire page. So this is exactly what Allison showed. And I'm a learner. So I'm kind of digesting this information and looking through, how am I going to take advantage of Scribe? This is typically what we would say works really well for authenticated viewers. So similar to what Allison mentioned, these are more specific individuals. They have a license with Scribe, etc. If you're not sure whether or not you have authenticated viewers or would like to explore more of what that looks like, just feel free to comment viewers, and we're happy to get back with you later on after this presentation with more information. Couple things I want to showcase. So say I'm scrolling through, I get to the Scribe section here, and I want to kind of learn how to set up my profile on Slack. Obviously with L&D, it might be with tool implementations, learning more in a different area, etc. I would just kind of scroll through this and say I wanted additional assistance. What I would do is essentially click this button here that says open in Sidekick. what it does is it would open on the right-hand side, that Sidekick bar essentially. What this looks like is this bar right here on the right-hand side. So obviously I just opened it up via that browser extension right there, but you can click this and it'll direct you straight to that website. But I'm going to quickly showcase what that Sidekick looks like here. So say I wanted to look up how to invite users on Scribe. I can go ahead and do that now, how to invite users. And what that learner will see is a couple of different scribes that is related to what I searched up. And so I have it right here, how to invite users on Scribe. I'm going to go ahead and click that. And a couple of things that I can do. I can basically just follow this step-by-step instruction by, viewing this. I can see that the instruction here says click invite, etc. If this was a more complex process, what I really like to showcase individuals is this ability to use Guide Me. Guide Me is a feature that a ton of learners like, and why L&D teams typically go for Scribe, because again, it's extra hand-holding. Your learners are able to really understand that product in depth. And as you can see, that click target pops up right on the screen. So again, extra hand-holding, it really ensures that you're implementing a specific tool and following a specific process, in detail right here. So it's able to kind of showcase those different click targets there, which I really enjoy. Something else I like about that Sidekick feature is that search up anything you want. So if I really wanted to search up how to invite a user again, and I knew for a fact, for example, that the person who knows all things Scribe is Aaron, I can go ahead and filter for his specific Scribe. Same thing if I knew it was made by a specific team, if I want it within a specific application, etc. It's a really great filtering process so that you are able to find those scribes a lot easier. If you're finding that your users are still getting a little overwhelmed by the Sidekick tool, we do have another option here, and it's called our API. If your organization already has an existing chatbot, we're able to kind of link Scribe with this chatbot using our API feature. And what I can do here is search up anything. So I'll just look up how do I set up SSO. But obviously, as a learner, I can kind of ask it other questions. And what this will do is it'll pop out with a couple of different scribes within my organization that's essentially public. So this is a really great way, again, to kind of find those answers a lot easier, especially if, for learners, they're kind of having a difficult time looking through your knowledge base or whatever else. This is just a really great way to do this. This is available on our higher tier. So if this is something that's interesting to you, feel free to comment API and we'll give you more information regarding this specific tool. Amazing. You see there's a couple of things on the chat here. Perfect. Cool. If you guys have any other questions regarding that, learner journey, feel free to leave a comment there. We're happy to answer additional questions as they go through. If those learners end up really liking Scribe, they want to create their own content as well, etc. Something that we always really like to showcase for that continuous learning is our improved workflows with AI. So if you click this button right here, this is improve workflows with AI. And what it does is it basically scans through your entire Scribe. It gives you an efficiency score and a couple of suggestions to make that workflow a lot more efficient and straight to the point, essentially. So you can go through, you can see if there's anything that you like, you can click save or you can click show me how. If you're looking at this and you're thinking, I want to do this later, you can click save. If you want to look at this right now, you can click show me how. And it'll give you a step-by-step instruction on how you can alter your specific workflow so that, this change is being made. It's a little bit more efficient. It boosts your efficiency score, and you're not having to go through additional steps to get to an endpoint. So this is something that I always like showcasing to our teams. If this really interests you, if how to make your work a little bit more efficient interests you at all, we also have another product called Optimize. And this kind of takes a step back and analyzes the work of all different individuals across different teams. So again, for L&D teams, this is perfect because you're able to really see which teams are doing the most efficient work, how they're doing that, and deploy it to the rest of those individuals. And so if this is something that's interesting to you, feel free to leave a comment and we'll send you more information later on. Awesome. I'm going to pause here to see if anyone has any other questions. All right. So as we're kind of drawing to a close here, I want to go over a couple of other things. So for those of you who have made it to the end of Scribe Spotlight, thank you all for joining. Just a general recommended onboarding. This is kind of our final segment to our onboarding journey. If you haven't already, go ahead and check your inbox. Make sure you didn't miss anything. And if you need to schedule a call with us, there's probably a link within your email. The next thing that we always recommend is going to Scribe 101 for those foundational learnings of Scribe. So if you're, watching Spotlight, you're thinking, okay, I need a refresher. We always recommend going to Scribe 101. Allison or Meg will send over a link to register for that. And then obviously we have Scribe Spotlight. These are every week with rotating topics. So obviously this week was L&D. Next week will be on sharing an organization, etc. If you are interested in these types of webinars, maybe you missed something that you really wanted to join, feel free to check us out on YouTube. We do post these webinars online, so you're able to learn asynchronously. You can share this with your team, with anyone who might find it helpful as well. And like I mentioned earlier, this is our schedule for February. This is our last session in January, so appreciate everyone coming out to make it today. But next week we'll be on sharing an organization. February 11th will be on pages. February 18th will be something viewer specific. So if you have any viewers in mind, feel free to invite them there. And then last but not least, we have an accounting and finance use case. And so if you have accounting and finance teams who might be interested in learning more, please feel free to send over that link to them. But if you guys are interested in any of all of these, we're also happy to send you the link directly. So let us know. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for joining, and we hope to see you in a future Scribe Spotlight. Thank you all. Bye.